And Peter knew in advance that everything around him was going to get dissolved like trash in the incinerator. And because he knew that, he says, I want you guys, if you know that, what are you going to focus on? Are you going to focus on when Jesus comes to get you, that he's going to look at you and say, sorry, you can't, it reminds me, every time we get on a plane, the strange things people try and take on airplanes. And those, smiling stewardesses stand like this and they go, no, that won't fit on the plane. And the people will try. They carry it down the aisle and they go, boom, boom, and the stewardess will sit there and go, we have to tag it. It can't go with you. It has to go underneath. Did you know that's what Jesus is saying? You can't come in with all that stuff. He doesn't put it underneath. He just burns it. And so Peter said, what should you focus on? In other words, 2,000 years ago, Peter asked these believers a simple question. I think it's a good one for us. What on earth are you living for? If everything on earth we're going to present to Jesus Christ, ultimately at the judgment seat of Christ, what on earth are you living for? Are you living for what he's going to reject? I mean, does it sound wise to you to just, it's like going through Walmart and throwing everything into your basket that you know that you shouldn't buy. And especially if someone else is paying for it, if they've already told you, I'm not going to pay for any of that, why do you put it in the basket? That's what Peter's saying. He says, don't do that. What are you living for? Peter heard Jesus warn him about materialism, and he never forgot it. He said, the craving after things that riches can buy first enslaves our heart. Then it takes captive our mind. Then it will conquer our wills. See, many people are, I was just reading a biography of John D. Rockefeller. And you know what it says? He was the first billionaire. And he was earning $1 million a week in 1910. I mean, he was just very well off. And yet he was sickly, he was anxious, he couldn't sleep, he was living on crackers and milk. Until finally someone talked to him. He was a Baptist, by the way. And someone said to him, doesn't your Baptist Bible say anything about, giving away and getting hundredfold? And Rockefeller's life direction changed, and he started being philanthropic and giving. And see, Peter, in a spiritual sense, that was just in an eleemosynary way. He was just trying to be nice to people. But Peter's saying, for God's sake, what are you spending your lives for? Jesus said, and Peter heard it, either we lay up treasures in heaven that can never be lost, or we clutter our life on earth with things that will cause us to lose our treasures in heaven. God says there's no middle ground. You can't have two masters. If you spend your life serving and honoring and filling your life with what does not please the Lord, you don't have room. You can't carry both loads through life. Jesus said either you carry my load, my burden is easy, my load is light, or you go through life not pleasing me and feeling the resistance that comes. And Peter says, I don't want that. So Peter is asking them, and by application us, should we spend our lives collecting and guarding and seeking out and holding on to trash that will only be taken away from us by God and burned? Or should we be seeking eternal treasures that last, that will stay with us forever, and that we can give back to Jesus as our adoring, everlasting worship? Paul talked about that in 1 Thessalonians 2:19 and 20. You know what he says? When he was writing back to the Thessalonians that he had led to the Lord, that he had nurtured in the Lord, that he had taught and been a part of their lives in discipleship, he says, you are my hope and joy and crown of rejoicing at the coming of the Lord. What he's saying is when Jesus comes and when he sees what's in my basket, you're there. I mean, is there anybody in your basket that you have pointed to Christ, that you have nurtured, that you have discipled, that you have prayed for? People have all these computerized alerts for stuff they want to buy. Do you have a prayer alert for people that you want to present the gospel to? I mean, since Jesus left us here to make disciples, shouldn't you have a measurable amount of disciples in your past, if that's what he left you to do? and in your present plans and in your future plans, disciple making, being a part of the process? Peter says, that's what I want. It all seems quite clear cut, Peter said, doesn't it to us? And that's why he wrote down what I call Peter's lessons on the end of the world, materialism, contentment, and the uncluttered life. And basically, if you look at 2 Peter chapter 3, Peter lays out for the saints in century 1 a beautiful flow for them to think about. And I think when you see it, it really makes you think. It was inspired by God, who jealously wants all of our attention, all of our affections, and most of all, he wants our cravings. Did you know the word lust, epithumia? The word lust, thumos is desire, epi means strong. It means craving. Did you know that lust is the negative way of saying that word, and desiring God is a positive way of saying it? It's the same word. We are to have as longing a craving for God as we have for the things, the pleasures of this world. He says, you got to pick, though. You can't desire them both. You got to pick one or the other.